Hello and welcome to the Fire in the Belly show. Today we'll have myself, Mighty Pete, and we are joined by the Gail, Rudolph. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Pete, for having me on your show.
Listen, absolutely delighted. You are the other side of the other side of the Atlantic anyway. So tell us, Gail, where are you? Who are you? And what do you do?
I actually am in Palo Alto, California. So I am a executive coach, author, speaker, and trainer, and just really want to add value to other people.
Wow, that's beautiful. So to give readers a bit more of a description, so Gail Rudolph is the author of the new best-selling book. Best-selling is just happened, right? So that's did you say that on the well, tell us where have you gone bestseller?
Wall Street Journal and USA Today.
Fantastic.
Just a couple weeks ago.
Yep. Wow. So your new book is Power Up, Power Down: How to Reclaim Control and Make Every Situation a Win-Win. Gail has spent years as an executive professional maneuvering the power dynamics that's happened in all interpersonal interactions. One day she had an epiphany. Nobody takes our power. We give it away. The go-to expert on how to harness interpersonal power and create win-win outcomes. Gail's mission is to help those who often feel overlooked and underestimated. Gail, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to this. So first of all, tell us, what is your fire in your belly?
It is about learning about and harnessing your interpersonal power. You see, I was the youngest of 4 children, my eldest being 18 years older than I am. So when I started out as a young child, I automatically, by default, didn't have my voice heard and felt like I didn't have any power or any control over being heard, over having a seat at the table. And actually, it impacted me from a very, very young age. And then when I played that out, and I learned some bad habits, I might add to that. You know, as a child, you learn to scream, you learn to yell, you learn to try to get attention in any way you possibly can. And as I got older, when I got into the workforce, what happened was I was having the same struggles. And it really came to me one day when I was the associate executive director at a community foundation, and the executive director, which was the only other employee, was part-time. So I'm full-time, he's my boss, he's part-time. Already a bad setup and situation. But I had actually advanced the foundation and had met our 3-year goals in a little bit over than a year. And I said, hey, you know, I'm doing a great job. It's time for me to ask for a raise. So I actually went to my boss and I said, hey, you know, we've gone 3 years now. We've met our 3-year goals, and it's just a little over a year. I really think it's time that we talk about me having a raise. And he looked at me, Pete, and he said, well, don't you get child support? Well, I was a single mom at the time, and I was dumbfounded. I'm like, what does child support have to do with the job I'm doing here? And I actually said that to him. But I continued, you know, for several weeks to actually go to him and ask him, what about getting a raise? We've met our goals. And then I was delighted one day when I looked at the board agenda and I saw employee raises on the board agenda. And then I was completely depleted when I went to the board meeting and found out that that was a raise for him and not for me. So here I was doing the majority of the work. He was getting the majority of the credit. And I didn't know how to really harness my power and take control of that situation. So I ultimately ended up leaving the organization. But as I went throughout my career, although I was very, very successful in my career and sat in C-suites, what I found was this frustration that happened in me. I was sitting at the table, but I wasn't being heard. I wasn't being given the voice that I needed to be able to give and bring my best to work. And it was actually out of that journey that I woke up and said, wait a minute, nobody takes our power away. We actually give it away. There's things that we can do. And so I decided to write a guidebook to help other people.
Oh, wow. It's interesting. What's come straight to my mind is, why weren't you being heard?
You know, we and I think women especially unknowingly give our power away. we do things naturally. Society has kind of trained us to do different things that actually give our power away. One of the biggest things that I talk about is taking some lessons from the animal kingdom, right? In the animal kingdom, the animals get big, right? When they want to be powerful. So think about the peacock, full spread, beautiful feathers, or they can be trained in. And when I talk about power, I'm not talking about dominance or control. I'm just talking about the ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or a course of event. And women, what we have been taught to do is to become small. We sit with our legs crossed, a lot of times our hands in our lap, our papers are directly in front of us. Where if you would watch and if you pay attention when you go to a meeting, men tend to spread out, they'll spread their papers out. And I've even watched women in a meeting where somebody will come sit down and they will move their stuff so that they have even less space just to give somebody else more space. And it was those things that I started to observe and to watch as people were interacting with each other, how they responded, that I was like, wow, there's some actual physical things that we can do to harness our power.
It's so true when you look at that, and how much of it is self-induced and how much of it is coming from the industry. And I'm going to say the industry just because it is, or it has been, male dominated and male focused.
I'm not going to lie, there is some that comes from the industry, but there's also some from us. When I talk about power, I'm talking about that harnessing our interpersonal power. It's always present. I have been in situations where there is definitely a male dominant kind of ego going on, but I can walk away knowing I held my own personal power. See, power is kind of two sides of the same coin. And I don't think we understand that. And that's where the title of the book comes, Powering Up or Powering Down. And taking that space between a stimulus and response and actually choosing whether we want to power up during that time or power down makes all the difference in the world. So let me explain a little bit. Powering up is a choice we make to step into a fuller presence, such as making direct eye contact or taking up that space that I talked about. Powering down, on the other hand, is intentionally changing our stance, maybe expressing empathy or giving others a chance to interrupt you, or using a softer tone of voice. You see, powering down, we've often viewed as being very, very bad or something we don't want to do. But I'm here to tell you that powering down can be a very, very effective tool as long as we intentionally use it and hold our power to make people feel more at ease. So there's some great people in our history that were wonderful power downers. Martin Luther King, I know you're on the other side of the ocean, but Martin Luther King was one of them. He was a master at powering down, and look how influential he was.
Well, that's it, because I mean, to be influential doesn't mean you have to be the loudest person in the room, right?
Right. And I always say sometimes when you raise your voice or you lose your temper, you actually give your power away. When you lose control, because power is about yourself. It's about having control of yourself and how you're interacting with other people.
That's super interesting. So, I mean, talking about controlling yourself, I mean, is there a risk that you sort of step out of congruency because you're trying to fit a role, right? Potentially, if it's not in your natural situation. So you're trying to be the role of the leader or the role of the empath or the role of the engineer, whatever the position is, right? So is there a risk that you come out of congruency?
No, because when we talk about power, it's something that happens inside of us. And it's actually being very authentic in who we are. It's about making choices. So think about it this way. When you are in a room and somebody walks into the room, have you ever felt that there's just a power? They might be a celebrity. They don't have to say anything. They don't have to do anything. They're just present. You know that they're very sure of themselves. That's the energy that we talk about when we talk about power. It ebbs and flows in every conversation that we have. Pete, you shared with me before the show that you have some young children. Well, I can guarantee you that you have power dynamics happening within your interactions with your children all the time. Well, we have them, whether we even realize them, in every interaction that we have. The idea is to use the power dynamics for good, not for control, not to try to dominate or manipulate other people, but for each to walk away feeling empowered, to feeling valuable, as if they have something good to bring to the table. And that's anything than being authentic and who you actually are.
I'm not suggesting that I actually have power over my kids, right?
Well, we've all been there.
Yeah, it's like who you are at work and who you are in front of your kids is completely different. They'll dress you down in seconds. But so just to put this into context for me, so when you say powering up, power down, is this the inner game or the outer game? I mean, is this powering yourself up and down, or is it your interaction with others, or is it powering up and powering down others around you? What's your main focus here?
Actually, it's a little bit of all of it. So when we talk in the book, we talk about, first of all, that you have to actually have your right mindset. You can't live with an I can't mentality. You can't, be like, I can't do this. I don't believe I'm good, or I'm bad, or, I don't have any power. You have to change, first of all, your internal view of it. And I always tell people that their motto should be, today is the day I take my power back. So it has to start within us, because if we don't believe we have power, again, we're not going to be able to influence those people around us. However, when we talk about power, we talk about power being the capacity or the ability to direct or influence the behavior of others, or a course of events. So what we are, we can't be who we are without it extending out to other people. So when we talk about power, it starts inside us, but it also extends out to be how people interact with us. So I always say, you cannot control other people. The law of power is that the only person you have control over is yourself. But if you can control your interaction with other people, you can change their experience with you. And by changing that experience, then you can start changing your workplace, your community, and ultimately the world.
It's so true. And funny, someone, going through and saying you can't experience outside of yourself, right? So the experience is what you choose it to be. Because if we have an experience outside of us, it's called an out-of-body experience, and that has a whole different topic, right? So how we choose to take on somebody else's beliefs, expectations, whatever, right, is our choice. We can't change outside, we can only change inside.
We can only change ourselves. We waste so much time and energy trying to change other people. I mean, we really do. I see it every day. We're trying to get other people to do things or behave, and the only one we really have control over is ourselves.
When did the change come for you, Gail?
Mine was a gradual change. I learned this, but it was really in a meeting when I watched a board kind of happen, a situation in a board of directors meeting. So I had, there was one male board of directors that had actually said that he was hosting the male members of the foundation staff to a retreat, and he was only offering it to the male members of the staff because he actually said they are the true leaders. And I was a consultant at the time, so I could not, I couldn't say anything. And I kind of watched this unfold, and I'm watching just the women in the room being completely depleted, including the other women board members. They didn't know how to respond. And I'm watching the situation. I'm like, they're being quiet. And by being quiet, I was realizing they're giving their power away. And it was a real big epiphany for me to say, hey, you know what? There's ways to regain our power without confronting people, without butting heads with people. We just have to be creative on how we do it. So in the meeting a little bit later, when I realized that nobody else was going to actually step up and say anything, I interjected and I said, hey, we have something for the male board members of the team. What do we have for the female board members of the team? What's going on? Just nonchalantly ask a question, no pointing fingers, no anything. And it was amazing because one of the female board members said, I know this great place that's doing some training. Let's get them involved. And it ended up, they still ended up going 2 different places to get their training. We probably didn't change that other board member's mind, but I tell you what did happen is that team realized that there was just enough power with each one, and modeling then for that board to be able to say, hey, there's a way to address these issues without butting heads and creating so much tension.
It's, yeah, it is powerful, but it takes a voice too, right? Because change takes, conflict is not the right thing, but it takes somebody to actually to speak up or to break the pattern, right? Because otherwise things, you're at risk of never changing if you let people just figure it out for themselves. Sometimes you need to have a catalyst there.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've noticed, especially when it comes to power and it comes to dynamics, and of course I'm a female, so I deal a lot with the male and female dynamics, but it's that people say and do things and they're not intentionally trying to do it. They have, a lot of times they're just caught off guard and they say the wrong thing. I worked with a lady who actually was trying to get a promotion, and we were really working on her power. She was struggling with her own self-esteem, her own self-worth, kind of her own mindset around what she was doing, but she was excellent at what she did. And she went to her boss and said, I think it's time, I want to actually see what I can do about moving up in the organization. And he said, well, you're really great at your job and what you do, but I just don't know if you have the ability, to work with the other team. And she came back to me and I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of an oxymoron. You can't be great at your job and not be able to work with others. It just, she was just totally dumbfounded. But I coached her a little bit, and she went to a meeting with her boss at the time, and they sat down and they were working on a project, and it just so happened it was a night meeting. They had pulled together a dinner with a lot of volunteers, and she happened to be the only female there. Well, because there were only 2 staff members, her boss and herself, they sat at, kind of opposite ends, but she didn't sit at the end of the table. She kind of sat to the side, and because she had the president of the board sit at the other end of the table, honoring his position. And her boss, not thinking, not even realizing it, said, well, this person is here because she's taking notes. At another time, she would have been completely depleted. Like, okay, here I am in front of these people. I can't say anything. I can't do anything. I can't put my boss on. But we had been coaching, we had been talking. And I said, there's always a way to do it without confronting other people, to make a win-win. So ultimately, she said, that's right. I'm here to take notes because I'm building out the strategy for this project. So I'm probably going to ask you to speak up. I may interrupt you at times. I may ask you to repeat, but that's because I want to get the absolute best strategy we can for this project moving forward. 2 days later, her boss called her in and said, we need to look at moving you up in the organization. She reclaimed her power without creating a power struggle.
And that's beautiful, right? That's just a reframing exercise, essentially, to to set that back out, set out the intention, right?
Right. Yep.
Just to clarify here, is is this focused at females in the business world, or powering up, powering down? Is it male, female, doesn't really matter? Is it always going to be predominantly sort of female based?
Well, I wrote the book from a female perspective. I really wrote it for women and minorities in the workplace. However, when the book was actually written, what I get is I get a lot of males that come to me and said, man, I really love the awareness around this. I can really watch this because it's about creating win-win situations. The book has actually become more prevalent in males than I ever actually dreamed that it would be. But power is present. It's always present. It's always available to us. It's that ebb and flow of the energy that happens back and forth, and being conscious of it and making choices is what we're talking about. So that's a human trait, not necessarily a male or female trait.
Mm. But I mean, it is also important, I suppose, to recognize that, men and women have different talents as well, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there is empathy levels, intuitive levels, which is very much typically in a female's power set, their tool set, right? And so I suppose it's I'm just in my mind, I'm just trying to say, how do you, what is the ideal organization that basically gets the best of every individual, regardless of their sexual orientation or minority or majority, whatever? How do you do that?
Well, I think Pete, I think it starts with us. I think that nobody gives us our power. Our power actually belongs inside of us. So it's about claiming that power, knowing when to lower your voice, right? Knowing when to sit back and take up more space, knowing when to be smaller and lean forward, knowing when to express that empathy, when to make eye contact, when not to make eye contact. There's some very basic things that I tell women when they come to a meeting. Don't bring every bag, a bunch of bags. Men don't show up in a meeting with a bunch of bags. They show up with the notebook they need and a pen. And don't become the bag lady is actually what I tell them. Don't be the bag lady. Women tend to come up with a bag and their purse and something like that. Don't do that. Come in. The other thing that we've learned is although they sound great and we love it, heels, loud shoes actually make a difference too. As you're coming down the hallway, they can actually give your power away, especially if you're going to a board meeting. Rushed or being hurried when you come into a meeting because you're out of breath. So I tell people, I don't care if you ran up a set of stairs, you make sure you come in calm and in control of yourself, because we're talking about in control of yourself. There's never going to be a perfect organization that's going to be all inclusive. There's always going to be these problems. There's always going to be people who are more dominant than other people. There are going to be people that are more shy, that are more introverted, that don't have a hard time expressing what they need to say. And it's about not just about expressing what you need to say in the appropriate way, but it's about learning how to get the other person to listen to you naturally. I mean, a smaller or a lower voice, putting in pauses, smiling, using inclusive or not using inclusive language. Those are all different ways that we can take our power up or power down. It sounds like it's hard, but I promise you it's not. I have a list of how to power up and power down in the book. It's that easy to just take a list and be able to use it.
Who would be a good example of doing this naturally? I mean, you're essentially the best representation of this.
Well, the absolute best representation, I think, is Jesus. I mean, I know that we don't want to go probably on a religious platform, but I referenced Martin Luther King earlier too, because they maintained their power. They were heard, but they did it in a way that it didn't require dominance or force or making people feel uncomfortable with what they were doing.
Isn't it amazing that actually, yeah, I mean, it's not the loudest person. In fact, quite often it could be the quietly spoken person, which is counterintuitive, right? Because you think, God, hold on, they're not the loudest person in the room, but yet they're commanding the power. How does that happen?
And it's about understanding our human tendencies. So when I'm with people, I will ask them to get into pairs and stand up and put their hands next to each other, so they've got both hands, the other person's hands are next to them. And then I will ask person A to push. And then I'll stop and I'll say, what happened? And inevitably, person B pushed back. Well, when we understand that dynamic, when we understand that when people are feeling pushed, when people are feeling that there's power being over them, that we want to avoid that power struggle. What we want to do is then we want to power down to be able to get done what we need to get done. Funny story, I had some problems with my car license. And it was actually a dealer mistake, but I had called, I wasn't getting much help with it. So I decided it was time to go over to the dealer and see if I could get some help. Already knew walking in that they were going to push back. And I had already spent 2 days on the phone with the DMV of California. And they said, this is the best way to get it fixed. So I went over and they had a reception area, and I walked up, and of course they gave me a lot of pushback. So I, first thing I did was tilt my head back and just kind of look down my nose a little bit, not like this, but but just kind of tilt my head back a little bit, because that's a power up. But when you tilt it down and look up, that's a power down. Very subtle move. And then I used genuine curiosity. How am I supposed to answer an officer if I get pulled over and my temporary plates are expired? They'd give me an answer and they'd say, but you didn't answer my question. What am I supposed to say to an officer? Because he's going to tell me this is my responsibility. Kept a very low voice. Well, eventually they did go get somebody and they set me down at a table, small 3-chair table. So first thing I did was got to power up. So I decided before I had gone in that I was only going to use the power up tools I had in the book. Wasn't going to do anything else. I was going to just power up, power down from the list. So I spread out. I put my purse over here. I kind of leaned back, crossed my legs, I just spread out. I took 2 of this little small 3-person table. So the person came up, and what was really interesting, and I know it's conditioning, is when they sat down, I naturally wanted to go like this and lean forward. And I had to force myself to continue to stay powered up because I needed to move my agenda on. But then as I noticed, as he pushed back, when we were actually making somewhere and I noticed that he was getting agitated, I would then lean forward to him. I'd start using inclusive language. Well, we need to solve this problem. How can we work on this together? And then I might go back and spread back out and say, I need to know how to answer the police officer. Used a lot of questions, but only using my tone of voice, my body language, my facial expressions, smiling, not smiling, tilting of my head. And, we got the problem solved, so much to the point that the general manager called me the next day and said, we understand we made quite a big mistake with your license, but my staff said they absolutely loved working with you. They had no idea that all I was doing was managing my reaction in the situation.
That's powerful, isn't it? Just as you say, it's how you turn up and how you show up, right?
It's how you show up. It's a choice that we make to harness that power.
Is it always a choice?
It is always a choice. But there is one thing that confuses us with power. We confuse boundaries with power all the time. And I really refer to boundaries as kind of that secret sauce when it comes to power. So boundaries are simply, the limits we set around our time and our energy and our money. But so many times we haven't set our boundaries, or we haven't defined our boundaries. And when we have people coming through and pushing against our boundaries, then what happens is that it's very hard for us to hold our power. We actually give our power away. So I think of boundaries. I have to think of my father when I think of boundaries. My father was miraculous at grooming our backyard. I mean, he would go out there, he would walk it, he would look at it, and he would pick up these little rocks. Now, at that time, they didn't have the catchers on the mower. So rocks were dangerous because they could fly out and hit somebody or break a window or damage something. So he would meticulously go out and pick up these rocks. They didn't belong in our yard. But what was interesting about our backyard is that our family knew exactly where our property line ended, and our neighbor knew exactly where his ended. So my dad would mow right up to the property line. My neighbor would mow right up to their property line. Anybody who looked beyond would know where the property line ended or began. but my family knew theirs. They knew where, and that's where when we look at boundaries, we need to know where we end and somebody else's start. What are we willing to do? How are we willing to manage our time and our energy and our money? And where do we stop and where do others begin? And to graciously, when somebody does throw that rock over into our yard, be able to kind of gently and graciously toss it back to say, that's not where I'm at. We see this a lot in the workplace. Here comes Meg on Friday afternoon, right? And she says, Gail, I had this problem with this client. I've got this due next week. I've got plans for the weekend. Can you help me out with this? And if I have helped her out in the past, I'm going to be very, very inclined to say yes. But I had plans of my own. And many times we change our plans to help somebody else out with something that's not our responsibility. So being able to gently say, you know, Meg, I'd really love to help you out with this problem if you would have been able to give me 2-day notice. I have plans too. So next time when you need me to help, please give me a 2-day notice. To be able to gently give that back to her, because we accept other people's responsibility that's not our own. And that actually plays into our power. Same thing with if you say you're not going to take phone calls or emails after 7 p.m. at night or on weekends, and you continually do it, you can't be mad at other people when they send you or call you during that time. So it's holding our boundaries, and it's really the secret sauce to holding our interpersonal power.
Well, what would be the symptoms or characteristics of, first of all, a powered down person, and then the same for a powered up person?
Well, again, if you're using it appropriately, they're both sides of the same coin, so that you want to do it. What I would say is that we naturally gravitate towards different power up or power down characteristics. So if you are automatically sitting small, if you're keeping your head down, if you're even excessive note taking, if somebody's got their head in the book and they're just taking every single note and never looking up and making eye contact, that can be a way to power down. I'm not saying taking notes is a way to power down. I'm saying that excessive note taking where you're never making eye contact, where other people are more dominant, right? They automatically take up space. They automatically have a firm, louder voice. They're always making eye contact. So we naturally gravitate towards certain tools, certain things that we do on the power spectrum, whether that be power up or power down. The idea is that all of these power tools are available to us in each and every situation. The key is to practice ones that you don't normally use and then become comfortable with using them appropriately in the situation. It's really a lot easier than you think. I mean, if you're used to going in and setting very small, you just make a conscious effort to sit bigger and larger. And what I tell people is find the ones that you automatically use, mark them, and then pick 3 on the other side of the coin that you aren't normally using and practice those. And once you get those down, then you practice some of the others. But it's just being conscious. Remember I said when I was at the dealer, right? I noticed I automatically wanted to get smaller and lean forward, where is a power down, where if I'm sitting back, spread out, that's a power up. But even you'll see the difference. When I sit back now, it's become automatic for me to lower my voice and use more pauses. And that changes the dynamic. I also tell people, this is actually not in the book, but I tell people it makes a difference on how you say different words too. So I was teaching my sister this last night, whether you say the words on an inhale or an exhale, and this can be a great way to gain your power if you're feeling like your power is out of control. So many times, especially for women, we tend to speak on the inhale. We answer the phone, hello, where we're breathing in as we're saying the word hello. But if we say and do it on the exhale, hello, our voice automatically becomes lower. And what I tell women, especially when I'm working with them, or people that are apt to have a problem with powering up, is take that breath in and be conscious of speaking on the out breath. That automatically will give you a ability to lower your voice, to lower your tone. It also gives you a second to regain yourself, regain your composure, because we get emotional about things, and it's partly about keeping your emotions intact.
I mean, is there when these steps are done, I mean, is there a necessity, do you think, to actually reduce some of the feminine traits in the workplace, or do you think they can go hand in hand?
I think they can go hand in hand, because that's your authentic self. If you don't show up being your authentic self, I'm a female. There's no way I can be anything but a female, right? I'm going to have certain traits. As you talked earlier, I'm probably a little bit more intuitive than most men. Not all men, but most men. But we need to show up as to who we are, being authentic. So one example that I use is Black Widow in the Avengers movie, Infinity Wars, right? There's a scene in Infinity Wars where she is fighting, she's killing people. She is the most powerful, wicked warrior you can possibly see, right? And then what happens is we see her, because her friend, the Hulk, Bruce Banner, is stuck in being the Hulk, and she's trying to bring him back. And even though Bruce could turn on her, right, and could probably kill her in an instant, we see her going from this fierce warrior and walking over to her friend and putting her hand on the Hulk's arm to bring her friend Bruce back. So see, she was using the power up. She was using those attributes, but then she turned and realized that this didn't call for a power up. This called for power down, being gentle, being kind. And that's what's so awesome about powering up and powering down. They are different sides of the same coin. Male, female, no matter what our race is, no matter what our age is, this is the energy that ebbs and flows, and it's available to all of us. And it's just choosing that time to use it.
Is there one that is slightly more powerful than the other, do you think? I mean, if you had to choose a characteristic set of power up or power down, which would you choose?
Well, I've had to learn to do more power up traits. I was automatically doing the power down traits. But now that I've learned how to move them back and forth, I would almost say the powering down traits. Well, it depends. The powering down traits are they can be extremely helpful, because what happens is that because we have that natural tendency for people to butt up against each other, I think that powering down becomes very important and vital. See, if we're defaulting to powering down, then we're giving our power away. If we're powering down as a choice, as a reaction to level the playing field, to harness the energy in the room so that it doesn't become a conflict, then powering down is just extremely beneficial and effective. See, I think that we really need to know the law of power. It's limitless. And it's there. It's for us to grab. It's just a choice whether we're going to grab it in a power up or power down way. And if we can, use the right and assess the right power tool for the right situation, it becomes a way of life for us. And then not only are we empowered, but we end up empowering other people around us.
There's so many people, I suppose, and I'm just thinking here, just think, power up, power down, and maybe it's more religious figures, religious spirituality, etc., that are naturally quite quiet, so they're not sort of shouting in your face, I know that's not all the power up characteristics as such, but the power down is, wisdom comes from silence, as you say. It comes from the pause. It comes from contemplative thought, and
From genuine curiosity.
mm,
Think about your children, right? Or my sister used to work in an Alzheimer's unit. If your children have their mind made up about something and you go at them and tell them that that's what they're supposed to do, what happens, right? They sit down right where they're at. So this tells us that this is an innate thing. It's something we've kind of conditioned ourselves out of, just like boundaries, where no as a toddler became a bad thing. So we get older and we never say no, and we end up doing all these things that we shouldn't probably be doing. But people automatically, they don't want their power taken away. Nobody likes that feeling of dominance. So what do you do with a child, right? That says, no, I'm not going to do it. And they cross their arms and they plop down on the floor, right? Well, one of the things that you might do is you go sit down on the floor with them and you ask them some questions about what's going on. And if we understand that that's power, that's the power energy that's going back and forth, then a lot of times when people are doing that in the workplace, or we're seeing them do that somewhere else, we can actually manage that by our choices that we make. Now, I'm not going to say that there's not some people out there that are just going to want to power over you and they're just going to steamroll over you. That's going to happen, and there's not anything you can do. But that's when you go back to, you only have the ability to change yourself.
But that's it, right? You have a choice. If you choose to be a contemplative person, to respond in your own time, as you say, to respond on the out breath, as opposed to sort of that aspect, well then you can break state, right? So you choose what you take on board then.
Exactly. And in the book, I've actually outlined 6 different personalities. We call them personality traits. We don't like to use labels. I tell everybody, if you're going to label somebody, you label them as friend, because we've actually probably always been at least one of these traits or kind of scenarios that happen in the workplace. But then to talk about how to power up, power down. So one of them is the toxic pollinator. We gave them cute little fun names. But a toxic pollinator is somebody that actually will go around, and people do this without even realizing they're doing it. I was upset about something the other day, and I talked to somebody about it, and then I started to talk to somebody else, and I went, wait, I'm being a toxic pollinator and I'm not even thinking about it. But what happens is that they go around and they sow a little discord here, and they sow a little discord there, and they sow a little discord here. And then when the team comes back together, there's this big blow up, right? And everybody's going, what happened here? Didn't realize everybody was so emotionally charged about this. Well, because the toxic pollinators, like been a little bee going around pollinating, that you get this problem. Well, how do you handle a toxic pollinator? Do you power up or you power down? Well, with a toxic pollinator, you actually power up, and you actually do some things where you bring what they've said before to the forefront. You actually help them confront things they've said before. Most of the time, these individuals are great individuals, part of the organization. They're people you don't want to leave. You want them as part of your team, and most of them are wonderful team players, but they're doing a behavior that they don't realize they're doing. So by bringing that back to the forefront, by powering up in a way where you're not becoming confrontive, but you're reminding them of things they've said, how they've said they wanted to be a team player in a public situation, you're actually using a lot of tendencies, and you can power up with that toxic pollinator and decrease that behavior without ever really having a conversation with them. On the other hand, we have a character called the snaker. These are the people that are humorous and fun. You want them in your meetings because you are always laughing. They're the life of the party. They're great people to have around, but you have to watch out because they want to be the life of the party. They usually don't do a lot of their work, and they can come up and bite you and take credit for something you've done. Well, with these people, the last thing you want to do is power up. You want to use a power down, because if you start going head to head with them, the snake is going to bite you. So we talk about ways to actually power down with a snaker.
You're saying you've covered this in 5 or 6 different
We have
traits?
six. So we have the toxic pollinator, the snaker. We have the info hoarder. The info hoarder is the person in the workplace that gives you part of the information, all of the things that you need to do your job, except maybe a couple of key pieces of information so they can come in later and save the day because they know the answers to those things. My daughter, as funny as it was, actually came home a couple of weeks ago and said, "Mom, I think the culture in this organization I'm working are info hoarders. Nobody shares all the information." I said, "What are you going to do about it?" She goes, "I know exactly what to do about it. I'm going to make sure I talk to several people and get all the information." But there's key peoples that the info hoarders, they hold a little bit of the information. Another one is the insulter offloader. The insulter offloader is an interesting character because what they do is they reel at our emotions, right? So they insult us, and then they offload their work on us because we're reeling from the insult. I see this done with women a lot. And what happens is somebody comes up and goes, "Oh, well, you missed that." And we're like, "Well, I was trying, I got caught up." And then they go, "Hey, you know what? Can you help me with this report?" And they'll slap down a piece of work for you to do. I saw it in a healthcare situation. I was visiting a family, and the sister actually was in charge of the healthcare. The brother was in charge of all the financial things. And she had missed something. I don't know if she'd missed something. The gentleman was in his 90s. He was going to pass at some point anyway. But the brother actually came up to the sister and said, "Well, I guess you didn't see this coming." Well, she was exhausted. She was already trying to deal with healthcare issues in a situation where somebody was dying. She was overloaded as it was, and it really insulted her. And I could just see it on her face. She took it deep and personal. And then he said, "Oh, and by the way, I've been trying to change their mom and dad's address on this thing. And every time I go on, it's like a 2-hour wait. Can you do this for me?" And she said, "Okay." And she took it. And that I was like, excuse me, that's the ultimate insulter offloader, right? They get us reeling. Another one is the negatron. These are the rain on your parade, right? These go to the core of our own belief system. They have a way of tapping into we're not good enough. And we need to realize that the negatrons it's more about them than it is about us. But we have to look at our own emotions with them and make sure, and then power up or power down both with the negatron, depending on the situation. And then my last one, which is my favorite. I don't know if it's my favorite because I've probably been extremely guilty of it, or if it's my favorite because it has the cute little name. It's called the swoop and poop. So the swoop and poop as a leader, I was bad at doing this. I'd come into the office and I'd swoop in and I'd poop on them and I'd leave again. So the movie Top Gun, have you ever seen the movie Top Gun?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when Maverick and Goose swarm the tower? And what happens to the officer in the front? The coffee goes all down the front of them. Well, this is kind of what happens with the swoop and poop. So they come in, I see board members do this too. They come in, they very rarely are in the office, but they come in, they create all kinds of havoc when they're there. Usually get very emotional, get everybody all upset, somebody's not doing everything right, and then they disappear just as quick and easy as it is. But the team is left with this kind of reeling like, "Oh my gosh, what just happened?" There's everything that's going on. Board members would do it. And one of the things about the swoop and poop is they don't do it. They're very rare about doing it. They don't come in every day, because then you'd get used to it, but they only come in every once in a while, which I think is what gives them their power, because they're scarce. And there's a scarcity principle that Dr. Cialdini, who wrote Influence, known as the godfather of influence, talks about. And I think that that plays with the swoop and poop, is that people come in and we reel with them, but being able to power up or powering down, recognizing kind of these different scenarios, helps you to be able to prepare to power up or power down when you deal with them.
I love that. I mean, tell me this: the insulter offloader. I mean, that sounds almost, that is narcissistic, right? I mean, that's
it. Well, narcissism is a personality disorder. I think this is a way that people actually get other people to do their work for them. And I don't know if it's so much narcissistic, because I think sometimes that we need other people to help us with our work because we may not know how to do it, or we don't want to do the time. But I think the insulter offloader is definitely a trait that that is a learned behavior. So instead of people asking for help and being okay with that other person setting their boundaries and realizing that they need to take responsibility for what they're in charge of, I think that they use it as a tactic to dump their work on other people. Kind of a way to bust through other people's boundaries. That's why it's so important we know. I mean, when we're talking in that medical situation, if that sister had said, no, I deal with the medical, you deal with the business, that's it. How easy it would have been for her to respond and not play into that insulter offloader kind of tactic or scenario.
it does. It comes down to control too, isn't it? Because I mean, I suppose with men and women, I mean, it's the usual, one's from Mars and one's from Venus, right? But women are traditionally, just more empathetic, more connection based, more love based, right? So and men are different. So unfortunately, it's the characteristics naturally will be that often women will want to not serve, but I mean to help, right? To sort of connect, to help, to be there, which unfortunately, if misconstrued or if not managed correctly, could be deemed as you want to serve me. Well, which is very different to help me,
Right.
So it's almost, the education almost needs to come from the male side rather than.
Well, yes and no, but because we still have the power to control ourselves. So when we talk about people that are busting through our boundaries, right, we have the power and control to hold those property lines. I mean, we have a choice whether we're mowing the neighbor's yard or not. I mean, or we're going to allow them to throw their work or their things over into our yard. I mean, the same thing if they dump their bag of grass into our yard, right? We have a choice about that. And that's where I think that boundaries for women is probably the hardest thing that we've ever learned. Because we've kind of been told or taught, socialized to say yes and to always be helpful. Well, we do that a lot of times to our own detriment, because being a people pleaser can actually hurt our health. And that goes down to holding our boundaries. When we say yes to things we should be saying no to, when we're taking that responsibility, we're spreading ourselves way too thin. And that impacts ourselves and it impacts our own health. I mean, it gives us additional stress. We start getting headaches. We start getting stomach problems. We start getting high blood pressure. We're tired all the time. We start having sleep issues. We start getting very nervous or very anxious. We create bad habits with caffeine. We have difficulty concentrating and thinking, because we're not made as humans to be spread all over the place. We're not made to say yes to everything. And I think that many times, like I said, at 2 years old, we're taught that no is a bad word. And I think that somewhere along the way, that kind of gets conditioned out of males or more highly dominant females. And those of us that are not so highly dominant, we continue to think that we're here and we're supposed to say yes. We're supposed to help. We're supposed to always be there to lend a helping hand. And by holding our boundaries, we actually are taking care of ourselves, ultimately bringing a better version of ourselves to the table, because we're not exhausted, we're not tired, we're not having headaches.
I mean, people pleasing falls into a bit of a interesting category, right? Because that's sort of intentional giving the power away to hope that it comes back.
And that's it. It's, we hope that the power comes back. We hope that other people will hold our boundaries. And it's about grabbing that power ourselves and saying, hey, you know what? We have the responsibility to do this. We only have control over ourselves. In fact, we're the only person that does have control over ourselves. Just as much as we can't control other people, they can't control us. And we forget that. And that's why I say this energy, this power energy is available in any and every situation. It's a matter of, how do we want to use the power? How do we want to harness it?
What are you really proud of in your life?
What am I really proud of in my life? I am really proud of this book. I have to tell you, because when I get people that call me up and they say, Gail, you know what? You opened my eyes. I didn't realize I was giving my power away in this situation, or I didn't realize that I was letting people bust through my boundaries, and I learned how to say no, or my headaches have gone away because I understand now how to take care of myself. That's when I get really proud of the work that I've done. When I see people that are using their power and they're feeling good about it, and it's not creating adversarial relationships, but it's creating relationships that last. And I will say it ends some relationships. If relationships are people that are bad for you, if they're people that are just using you, then that requires sometimes being able to say no to friendships. And when people can say that, I just see them grow. I see them blossom. And that's when I get really, really proud of the work. This is my struggle. It's things I've struggled with since I was a little girl. People ask me, how long did it take you to write the book? And I say, well, I wrote the book in less than a year, but it was a lifetime of learning. But to be able to see people take from what I had struggled with for so long, what I didn't understand, and be able to use it, that just, to me, that's probably the biggest thing I'm proud of. I mean, there's my children, but that's the standard answer. But this is really something that I just love and feel very, very passionate towards.
Do you believe those things happen so that you would be at this point today? Do you believe in that, or?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every part of our life is a learning opportunity. It prepares us for the next part of our life. If I had not had that experience with those at work, if I had not been the youngest of 4 children with 18 years difference, right? I would have not understood or had a struggle with power or understood it. And I believe that we experience things in our life that lead us to our true purpose in life. I feel like I'm living my purpose right now. And my purpose is to help other people, to add value to other people. And I can do that through this because I've chosen through my life not to say, oh, I'm a victim. And I talk about that in the book, right? You choose every day whether you're going to be the victim or a victor. I could say, I'm a victim. I'm the youngest of 4 children and I just don't have a voice. Or I can say, you know what? I'm the youngest of 4 children. I'm struggling with this. I can choose to be victorious over this. And when we look at life as an opportunity, everything's a learning experience. There's no failure in life. It's all a learning experience. We have to learn the lessons to move to the next level. And we get really, really down on ourselves and we think we fail, and nobody fails. We don't fail. I heard a quote once that we can look at life in two different ways. One is if everything's a miracle, and another is if nothing is. Well, if we can look at the things in our life that aren't going well, the things that we struggle with, if we look at those as a miracle to be able to move us to the next platform, then we can. I like to think about driving a car. If I would have given the keys to the car to my son when he was 10 years old, it would have been a disaster, right? He had lessons he needed to learn. He needed to get more mature. He needed to go through driver's ed, right? I mean, there were so many different things he needed to do. And life is like that. We can't be given the keys to something that's further in our future without having the foundation to be able to build on it. And that's where our days, our lessons, our struggles, they come in. They're just teaching us what we need to do to move to the next plateau.
How much is goal setting or guidance an important part of this? I mean, does it take somebody else, a mentor or guidance from outside to help people to go through this process? Because I mean, self-reflection can be both easy but also incredibly hard, right? We can sometimes be the last person to spot our own sort of opportunities or sort of shortcomings.
Well, I think that when we talk about power, you can claim and start using your power now. You don't have to take a class. You don't have to take a no. You can go on and get the book, and you can get the list, and you can start doing it today. I think to learn how to be creative in certain situations that you're struggling in, that you may feel stuck in, an outside source to help you brainstorm about what you could be doing in those situations, or hearing additional stories. That's where a coach could come in, or somebody could come alongside you and help you with that, or take a class. But as far as actually harnessing it, it is super, super easy. You can do it in the next 5 minutes. I mean, just making a choice to spread out or not, or the way you tilt your head. That's the easy part. I think the harder part is the mindset that goes behind it.
Hmm. It's that yeah, I mean, one is, as you say, one's setting up a new habit, but then it's like a piece of clothing. You can wear the jacket, but it doesn't change the person.
Right.
As you said, it's changed the mindset within that says you're a different person, or you have a choice to change. Change how you think internally, then you change how you show up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of both.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how we've gotten habits, and we play. One of the saddest things I see is the negative self-talk. We've all been told things, and we've accepted it about ourselves. And a lot of people who love us have told us things in order to try to help us. You're not good at that, or you can't do this, with all of the best intentions. But you know what? That it does not limit us. I mean, I was a horrible speller in school. That stood in my way for a long, long time of writing a book. Well, guess what? I was still able to write a book.
With a spell checker.
With a spell checker. I mean, there are so many different things that we can choose, whether we want to internalize, or we can say, you know what, that's a great piece of information. I'm going to keep that in mind, but that's not who I am. That's not my purpose. And we put out or take down to just a very small ember the fire, in our belly, right? That fire that's inside of us, and we become smaller. So it's just an ember, and that's not what we're meant to be. We're supposed to be a beacon. That fire inside us is supposed to spread like a light to help any and everybody around us. And that fire is in us for a purpose. It's there to not only be the best version and show up the best version we can be, but to help the other people around us be the best version they can be.
Is there any organization or that demonstrates this particularly well, do you think?
Well, one nice thing is we have a lot of diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion trainings that are happening. And I don't know if there's particularly one organization, but I think people that focus on inclusion, when we teach it, we focus on inclusion because we're talking about respecting and including everybody and valuing other people. And I'm not familiar with one organization that does it really well, but I do know that there are people, and we do that in my company. We teach that on how to be inclusive, how to get past some old mindsets and how to look at things differently. We talk about people react in what we call the fast brain, and that's where we're working kind of on autopilot, and things have become habit to us. And we react in ways that we don't even realize that we react to them, and sometimes don't even go along with our belief system because that's just kind of the way we've been taught, and it's automatic. And getting to the core of that is the way that we change things. And again, we only have the power to change ourselves. So it starts with being able to change one person at a time, being able to change yourself, taking control over yourself, how you're viewing other people, how you're responding to other people. And then you can start change the whole.
You mentioned there in the extension of the book, how to make every situation a win-win. Mm-hmm. Is the win-win part, is that a negotiation, or is that a mixture of listening and responding accordingly?
It's a matter of listening and responding accordingly. We also talk about negotiation, because when you come to a negotiation, many people just come with the idea that they're going to get what they want. And that's not what it's about. It's about creating a win-win situation. It's about being curious. It's about listening to the other people. It's about coming to the absolute best solution for the problem that's at hand. It's also about forgiveness. Because when we talk about negotiation, we talk about win-win, we have to allow other people to be human. And if we hang on to unforgiveness, if we don't allow people to be people, because we are all going to make mistakes, we're all going to say the wrong thing at some point in time. And if we hold on to that unforgiveness, it actually becomes like a toxin in our own body. And we have to be able to forgive. And that's what I see a lot in negotiations, is that you get people that don't want to forgive the other person. You're not arguing your side of the point. First of all, we approach negotiations all wrong. We think it's to argue our side of the point. Very few, in fact, I've never, ever seen anything change because somebody has told me that their side is a great argument, or they've given me a great argument. That's not what changes people. What changes people and what changes situations are empathy, understanding, listening, genuine curiosity, and approaching the situation to create a win-win outcome around the situation, not about butting heads. Again, when that power goes and that dynamics go around, when we butt against other people, we can't create long-term relationships. We can't recreate good outcomes because the power dynamics are off.
I mean, is this to be aware of this? I mean, the likes of mediation and arbitration. I mean, I imagine these are going to be very useful skill sets to be able to at least spot the actual habits at play, right?
And they're natural to us. Remember, I talked about the child, right? That's doing it. We know how to respond to that, but we don't take those same lessons into the boardroom or into negotiations, and we look at the people around us and look at the dynamics that are happening. And we get so caught up in the intellectual part of it that we forget about the human feeling power dynamics that are happening. And when we do that, we miss it. And we miss each other.
However, have you enjoyed the process? Have you enjoyed writing the book?
I have unbelievably enjoyed writing the book. It was very therapeutic for me to actually be able to put it into writing and to actually think about what I'd learned over the years and what I could see other people do, yes, it was extremely therapeutic. It was a great exercise.
Is there going to be more?
As I'm going along, at first I was like, no, you've written a book, so
burn the
like
pens, burn the laptop. That's it. And then you go, maybe just don't burn it. Maybe just, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, as I continue to talk to people and I see different areas and things come up, there's a good possibility there will be more. But this one just came out in October, so we'll talk about this one for a while.
Yeah. So, do you think is this fulfilling your purpose? Do you think is this in line of what you're here to do?
I believe for me it is. This struggle is for me was something that I had to learn and I had to work towards and learn how to harness my own interpersonal power. But if you look around the world today, there are power struggles going on everywhere. And people don't understand power and they don't understand how to create win-win situations. They don't understand they don't understand the law of power, that they can only control themselves and they can't control other people. So I think the message is definitely something that the world needs to hear right now. And I think because of that, that was my purpose. That was my reason that I grew up and, always felt like an outsider in my own family, because this message was something I was brought here to do. Our purpose is in life, I think, is something that we don't think about very often, but our purpose can be whatever we've experienced, whatever we've gone through that we can share and help other people with. And we talk about purpose a lot, but it seems like something that needs to be far off, something that, as a goal we need to obtain. If I had set my goal to write this book when I was in my teens, the book would have never happened. Your purpose is being authentic and real in who you are right now, and then taking that purpose and helping other people with it.
It's powerful, isn't it? As you say, things happen at the right time for the right reasons, as long as, you sort of be present in the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think we just get caught up in the wrong things.
Yeah, sometimes, well, we choose everything, right? We choose the good and we choose the bad. We just don't realize we choose it for different reasons. Not good, not bad, just different reasons.
And there's something for us to learn. There's a reason we chose it. There's something that we need to learn from that.
How important is that? I mean, say you're using not that great example of walking into the car showroom and the risk is you put your head down and you small yourself. I mean, how is it important to review why, or is it more important to correct the action and step forward?
Well, always you want to look at why. Always you want to look at your own belief system about yourself. Because correcting the action will correct it in that moment, but it won't correct it long term. That's when you have to look internally. Yeah. So I call it, you have to take a look at your own belief system. I call it your own BS, right? Your own belief system of, why am I putting my head down? Do I not feel that I can be assertive? Do I not feel that it's appropriate for me to be assertive in the situation? Do I feel uncomfortable in expressing myself? What's happening, inside me? Why am I taking that type of stance, and what has fed into that type of stance? And understanding that I can change that, but it starts with how I believe about myself.
Yeah. I mean, it is that difference between sort of motivation and transformation, right? We can be motivated for a while, but it's going to wear off. You transform, and then should be a lifetime.
I say there's kind of 3 different ways to look at that. First of all, you got to examine the symptom. Are you doing something that you don't want to do, and why are you doing it? And where did it come from? When I work with people, a lot of times they have these type of reactions, or they power down because they grew up with an alcoholic parent. So they approach everybody as if they're an alcoholic, right? Because they need to be small, because they have this belief that everything has to be that way. That's how they have to behave. When we identify the symptoms, we kind of look at the root cause. What happened in our childhood? What's pressuring us to continue to behave that way? Sometimes we behave that way because we've learned, maybe past, maybe still, that there's rewards to behaving that way with certain people in our lives, right? Maybe you get more attention from somebody. Maybe you there's a payoff somewhere. So what's the root cause? What's your need that's happening inside of yourself? Are you needing to actually feel like you need to give things away? Do you feel that that's the only way you can get love, as if you're small? There's so many different things. And then to actually just, after you've examined all of that, then actually look at and respond to people instead of reacting to them. Then you can actually take it from the inside out.
So much to learn. So much to learn.
It's a journey. Life is a journey.
Absolutely. It's what you make of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, if you were to try and describe your fire in the belly then in one or two words, what would they be?
My fire in my belly is adding value to other people, helping them find their own value in themselves. My fire and my passion is just to help other people be the best version of themselves they can possibly be. So I don't know how to do that in 2 words.
Passion and service.
Passion and service. There you go.
Are you being the best version of yourself, do you think?
I'm doing it. I think that that's a choice you make every day. I think that you don't wake up and you automatically, it just doesn't automatically happen. I think you have to make a choice to be the best version of yourself. There are times I can tell you that I'm not the best version of myself. I have bad days too. I get frustrated with people. I just have to stand in line. But the idea is that we become the best version of ourselves the majority of the time, and not beat ourselves up for those times that we are human and we don't make it there. But it's a choice. It's a way of life to say, hey, I want to wake up today. I want to grow. I want to be who I want to be and be the best version of myself.
Yeah. It is indeed a choice.
It really is. Yeah.
So tell us, where can people learn more, hear more, see more, find out more?
The best way to reach us is at our website, gailrudolph.com. And I'll spell that because it can be spelled different ways. It's GailRudolph.com. If you go to our resource page, there's actually a boundary assessment you can take there, which helps you understand where you're at with holding your boundaries. There's a lot of resources on there. You can join our community. We'll be doing some teachings, and you can get our newsletters, and you'll learn about new events that are coming up also from that page.
And of course, the book itself is available through the website or through Amazon or other
through
retailers?
The website, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you can buy books. Yeah.
So just to remind people, power up, power down, how to reclaim control and make every situation a win-win. So Gail, have you a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
My final message to you is that power is available to you. Harness your interpersonal power, love it, play with it, don't be scared of it, and have fun. Have fun in life.
Beautiful. Gail, I thank you. I congratulate you on your bestseller status, and It's awesome. Well done, you. And here's to many more, hopefully, as well. So thank you for
Thank you.
coming and sharing today. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've so enjoyed visiting with you.
Thank you.